Good morning. This is Commissioner French, and I'm convening the regularly scheduled business meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission for this Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. On today's agenda, we have 14 consent agenda items and one noticed item. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Commissioner Keene and Commissioner Duffy. We will begin with the consent agenda. Commissioners, you've had the opportunity to review all of the proposed items on the consent agenda. And let me ask at this time if you have any questions or comments about those items. And I'll begin with Commissioner Keene.
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duffy.
Good morning, Chair French. I have no comments or questions, and I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve today's consent agenda. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Consent agenda is approved. We now move to our one noticed item. This is in docket number 21 KGSG 332 GIG, and it is a proposed order on NGTCC's petition for reconsideration of denial of its motion requesting issuance of a subpoena. Our presenter for this item is Mr. Brian Fedotin. Brian?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. On July 30th, the Natural Gas Transportation Customer Coalition, or NGTCC, filed a motion requesting a subpoena compelling the testimony and production of documents from S&P Global Platts Gas Daily for all documents relating to the S&P Global Platts Gas Daily Index for Southern Star Pipeline from February 10th through 20th, 2021, and for the testimony of the records custodian to explain the subpoenaed documents. On September 9th, the Commission denied NGTCC's motion for a subpoena, finding that while the Commission shares many of NGTCC's concerns regarding the wholesale natural gas markets and potential market manipulation, the power to investigate wholesale market behavior related to the data reported to S&P Global and take corrective action rests with FERC rather than the Commission. On September 14th, NGTCC filed a petition for reconsideration. In its petition for reconsideration, NGTCC offers the Commission and the public a substantially different rationale for its requested subpoena than it originally offered in its initial motion. Despite NGTCC's claim in its initial motion that the subpoena is to determine whether the gas daily price indices were free from price manipulation, price gouging, and profiteering, and to prevent an enormous $840 million burden to be placed on the shoulder of Kansas ratepayers, the petition for reconsideration now suggests a very different goal behind the subpoena. Reading an excerpt from the petition for reconsideration, the requested subpoena and documents related thereto will be used for the purpose of resisting KCC sanctioned penalties, which we believe are excessive and which hold no reasonable relationship to the contended violation of the KGS transportation tariff. So NGTCC is specifically representing the interest of one specific subset of commercial customers seeking to resist potential penalties. NGTCC is not representing residential customers or the broader interests of the vast majority of gas customers. In this order, the Commission reaches no decision on the reasonableness or appropriate amount of any potential penalties, but notes the penalties are a reasonable deterrent for potential free riders looking to use gas meant for others. Also, as Kansas Gas Service points out, the failure of third parties to deliver sufficient gas onto the system jeopardizes the ability of other customers to receive uninterrupted service, which had real public safety consequences during the February winter weather event. If NGTCC is successful in resisting legitimate penalties, its members can become free riders and pass their gas costs on to the remaining customers, NGTCC recognizes that by advocating for reduced or eliminated penalties, it is potentially subjecting residential customers to a large portion of the $390 million of additional gas costs that would otherwise be paid by the gas marketers. On September 29th, NGTCC supplemented its petition for reconsideration and acknowledged its members are not subject to penalties other than being passed through from their marketers, which is why they're interested in a subpoena. Until the commission reaches a decision on the appropriate amount of penalties, NGTCC's protests about excessive penalties are not right. NGTCC will have an opportunity to challenge any penalties at the time the commission issues a decision. This order also notes that FERC is the final and conclusive voice on whether wholesale market prices and indices appropriately reflected legitimate market concerns. And NGTCC does not dispute this fact in any of its multiple pleadings. As a final matter, the commission is troubled by paragraph 10 of NGTCC's petition for reconsideration, which laments the economic consequences its members face while not addressing the economic impact to all other customers, including the residential class. NGTCC's proposed solution would allow its members to potentially evade those economic impacts at the expenses of other Kansas ratepayers, namely the residential class. If NGTCC evades penalties on the theory that those must be based on manipulated or illegitimate index prices, but FERC does not ultimately reprice the wholesale market, then the residential class will be forced to pick up the tab for keeping the gas flowing to NGTCC's members. In other words, there is a real possibility that NGTCC becomes unjustly enriched at the expense of other KGS customers. Thus, granting NGTCC's request for special treatment as compared to other Kansans at this stage would be inequitable and wrong. Therefore, NGTCC's petition for reconsideration of its request to issue a subpoena is denied. With that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Brian. At this time, I will turn to my fellow commissioners to see if you have any questions for Mr. Fedotin, and I will start with Commissioner Keen.
For me, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy.
I believe that Mr. Fedotin has adequately expressed my views, and I believe the commission's views on this matter. Thank you, and I second the motion.
Do you make the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, I make the motion. I apologize.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the described order. Is there any further discussion on that motion? I would add just a bit of discussion. Thank you, Brian, for that really rigorous description of the order. We're saying a lot in this order, and so I think the document can basically speak for itself. I know we'll also be issuing a press release along with the order to give some more context. But I do want to make a more general statement about these gas pricing proceedings. A few weeks ago, we pointed out that it's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, not the KCC, that has jurisdiction to investigate and impact the wholesale natural gas prices. And at that time, there were some pretty loud voices suggesting that FERC wouldn't be investigating the right things and that this agency was abandoning ratepayers if it waited for FERC to investigate. Well, we fast forward a few weeks, and those same commenters have done a U-turn. They're now arguing that the FERC investigation is really important. The KCC should completely pause its work until after FERC's investigation of market manipulation is done. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not highlighting the inconsistency of those public statements to denigrate the commenters or suggest that their perspectives lack merit in any way. Instead, I would submit that this reflects the complexity of the issues that we're facing. There are pros and cons associated with every option. There are no easy or obvious answers here, and anyone suggesting that is selling something. But the good news is that we have time-tested ways of tackling complex issues. This commission, like its counterparts in other states, uses a deliberate process where we receive evidence, we hold hearings to probe and weigh that evidence, and then we make a decision that balances interests in the best way we can for all Kansans and all Kansas businesses. And that is what will happen in this case. So that's my comment. If there is no further discussion on the motion, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Mr. Fedotin. With
you.
that, we have reached the conclusion of today's business agenda. If there is no further business to come before us today, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Take care.